This is the type of commitment to the infusion of AI from technology companies that I want to see. The train hasn't quite left the station yet. Like, I feel like everyone's on it. Like, we're all on it. We're on the train. It just hasn't quite left the station yet. But once it does, it's going to be nuts.
Welcome to the EVOLVE Voices podcast, a platform to hear the fascinating stories behind the people that power global commerce. I'm Edilsa, a brand advisor, and your US host of EVOLVE Voices. Today's story is one of audacity. Former athlete and retail trailblazer Jenna Flateman Posner is helping retailers rethink how tech gets done. And after leading digital at SNIPES and Solo Brands, Jenna is now CEO of Chief Digital Agency, making this her official launch. We talk about why trust is the most broken part of retail tech, what it means to lead with authenticity, and how practical AI, not hype, is reshaping the customer experience. Jenna's story is a reminder, in a world of fast tech and AI, it's still human connection that moves us forward. Jenna, welcome to EVOLVE Voices. I am so happy to have you here. We talked a few weeks back, but I don't know if you noticed, but I was so embarrassed when I called your partner a husband last time. My closest friends are LGBTQ, and I told this story to all of them. One goes, "Why didn't you just say partner?"
Yeah.
And she wasn't wrong. So I was wondering, how many times has that happened to you?
Not often. I don't really exude the straight vibe. So people usually play it safe and go the partner out, but you went full on
I went
hetero.
full on.
Yeah, it's
Like,
funny. I know.
I honestly felt like such a shithead, and just loved how you handled that situation. It's clear that you just know how to do that for the long time. So, I wanted to take it back to where it all began for you with that resilience and just kind of grace to situations as you've gone along. I was going to actually start with your move to New York after college. It's where I was born and raised, but I realized we actually shared something even earlier, which was funny, boarding school. So I don't know if you know that about me, but I went to Groton in Massachusetts. Yes, this is exactly why. So I was like, wait, she went to Northfield? Like, what? Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't in sports, but all of my good friends were. And so I was always watching soccer and hockey. And your story of getting in I feel like where your probably drive began, and you called yourself kind of Jerry Maguire, if I'm not mistaken, and the way you got in. And I wanted to take me through when you first told your parents you wanted to go to boarding school and heard, hey, if you think you're playing, good luck.
Yeah, no, happy to tell that story. It's kind of a fun one. And you're right, such a key just indicator of my vibe. So I was an athlete my entire life. I was always trying to push myself to the next level. We were living in Vermont at the time, and I was really into ice hockey. And every summer, my parents would scrounge their pennies together, and they would send me to the elite hockey camp at Dartmouth. And that is where I got exposed to some of the best hockey in my high school career. And what I realized is that the girls that were really pushing the boundaries on the level of play were the girls that were all in prep school. And so one summer I came home and I said, Mom, Dad, if I'm going to be an athlete, I got to go to prep school. And they were like, yeah, okay. You do some research. You go ahead and apply. And if you get in, like, we'll see if we can figure it out. This was going to, require a healthy dose of financial aid. And, it wasn't easy for my parents to find the funds to send me. And I carried loans for a long time. But yeah, so it's funny. The Jerry Maguire reference is really around like being my own sports agent. Like, I literally got on the phone and started calling coaches at some of the best prep schools and said, "Hey, listen, I need you to come watch me play. I really want to go to your school, and I'd love for you to come, check me out." And so I remember like requesting pamphlets. I'm aging myself, but requesting pamphlets to be sent in the mail. I remember, using a pen to, hand write my application. I remember writing a check. I had to go open a checking account and get a check and write a check and send that as my application fee in the mail. My parents made me do all of it all on my own. And I got in and we went and visited a few schools, and I stepped on NMH's campus, and I knew that's where I wanted to be. But you're right. It was this very it was this milestone in my life where I really took control of my independence.
Yep.
And I really took control of like this next step. And not only did it give me confidence that, I could, accomplish these big lofty goals, or I could have a vision and then go execute it, but it put me into an incredibly rigorous educational environment that really set the trajectory for my collegiate education and ultimately the confidence to take on a city like New York.
Yeah, I also Jerry Maguired my situation, and for me it came through, I didn't have sports, so it was through scholarships. I was like, I need to figure out how I get some financial aid for private school. Yeah. So I was applying to like any sort of minority-based grant situation, and that's how I ended up. And I was so young. I don't know why I had the chutzpah to go to my parents like, I'm going to boarding school. This is how I'm going to be better. And I also similarly presented to them the option, and it was almost like, okay, we can't say no now. Like now that you have an acceptance in our hands,
gotta go.
And it was interesting as I thought about it. I don't know where I got that was how I needed to get to where I needed to be. And I wonder for you, like, you knew that to be an athlete, you needed to be with the best. You needed to go to prep school. How did you know, though? Like, was it through seeing, like, the caliber of talent? Like, what were the cues you were picking up?
Yeah, no, it definitely was. I mean, going to this camp and, you had to, like, try out to be in certain levels of the camp. And, like, so it was already a very competitive situation. And you could just see that, like, all the girls that were standouts were in this, prep school league. And, it just became very clear that if I wanted to compete at that level, I was going to have to compete at that level. And that the chances of me continuing to be an athlete in college, we're going to require getting the level of exposure that those programs can really offer. And it's funny talking about it too. And you say, oh yeah, I went to boarding school. Still to this day, a lot of the knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, what did you do? And I said, no, like this was me. I wanted to get out. I was ready to go. And I'm so glad I did. My wife and I are talking about it now. We have two 11-year-olds and a 5-year-old, and they're, the 11-year-olds are going to be in middle school next year. And we're like, that's only a couple years away from high school. What are we thinking about here? Are we, would we send them away?
Yeah.
Would we, give that to them as an option? I think what was so beautiful about my journey there is that I really wanted it, right? Mm-hmm. I really, really wanted it. This wasn't something my parents wanted for me. This wasn't something that they had tried to get me to consider. This was something that was totally driven 100% by me, which they ended up supporting.
It's where it all started. This kind of like, these are my decisions and what I'm going to do. But I wanted, before flipping to that kind of sentiment, I also like got the same feeling from people like, what did you do? Like, the other thing was, is it all girls? Like, because, and so people would be like, is it all girls? Are you really going to an all girls school? And I was like, actually, no, mine is co-ed, but like, wouldn't have been a big deal if it was. And, but I think I also remember the quirks. Like, I'm now going to age myself. I always remember telling people at Groton to meet me at the lampposts. And if they weren't on time, I'd go back to the library, email them, check in, and that was how we would find each other again. Any funny or quirky memories you have from boarding school?
Oh, I don't know if they're appropriate. The things that come to mind. I think, being 14, 15, 16, and, I was an only child, and sharing a room, I had a Korean roommate. Her name was Sabrina Lin. And it's really funny. She, this is so embarrassing. She would do this thing where she would like, if she had any pimples on her face, she would put paper on her face at night. She'd fall asleep with like paper on her face. Oh my God. And that is just like one funny thing where I'm just like, wow, it's like you're in this like melting pot of an educational institution and you're just totally exposed to like different people and traditions and cultures and habits. And it just really puts you in this situation where you just have to really learn how to be resilient, right? You have to learn how to be accepting and open and understand that like it's there's a level of tolerance that's required because there's so much that's unknown. So I feel super blessed that I was able to go through that transition partially through high school so that when I went off to college, it wasn't foreign to me. Like that change and that learning and that openness and that resilience is something that I had years in boarding school to kind of foster and with the care of adults around me that really cared,
Yeah. You call it resilience. I also call it self-sufficiency. Probably one is you're an only child, so you had to do a lot of things probably alone.
Yeah.
And then you just learn how to do things on your own. Do you think that's the main takeaway you carry into work and what you're doing today, or is there something else from back in those days?
I think for me, it was the throwing myself into the deep end. It was a total unknown.
Yep.
And there was so much fear and there was so much rigor and there was so much excitement in that experience of just diving in, right? Just being like, I know I need to do this. I don't know how I'm going to get through it, but I'm just going to figure it out.
Yep.
And I think it's that overcoming that at such a young age for the first time, 14, 15, those fears don't really diminish. I mean, it's like when you're jumping into something head first that you've never done before, it takes a level of trust and confidence in yourself to overcome some of those unknowns. And I think doing that at an early age did create a baseline for, a confidence or at least a willingness to try and fail and try and fail. And not everybody's willing to take those risks. So I think taking that risk so young and getting through it provided a level of confidence that I definitely bring with me forward.
Yeah, you talked about try and fail. A lot of things you tried is athlete. It's a central part of your story. You were on the hockey team in high school. I think I remember reading you were track star at Wesleyan for all 4 years. And then post-college, you were a professional rugby player. And so that's a lot of tries and not a lot of fails in there. And I've heard that from many friends who are athletes that there's a period of mourning when that career ends. What was the moment when it hit you like it's over?
Yeah, it's interesting. I will say I'll give you my experience being in the professional athlete scene. For me personally in that environment, there was a lot of failure. So the way that these pools work, it's kind of similar to like the women's national team for soccer. So you kind of have this pool, this pool of qualified players that get access to the pool. And you try out at all these national tournaments and they kind of handpick the pool. And then each year the pool is made. These are the pool of talent that they can select from when they build their teams to go and travel and play. Mm-hmm. And so they're always looking at you, at the trajectory of your fitness and your health, right? Because as you're playing, people are getting hurt and people are, in and out of shape and, or traveling for work or, it's like we were in a work to play kind of scenario where we didn't have big sponsors that were paying our bills, right? We still had to have jobs. And so not everybody was always available. And so what I will say is being in that pool, I wasn't a star in that pool. I had to work and not be selected a lot. And so that is hard. And that, talk about resilience, working as hard as you can and not getting selected and coming back again and working hard. And I mean, rugby's not a soft sport. You're getting beat up, right? You're getting black eyes and broken arms and you are like coming back from injuries and you're right. So I'll say that professional athlete scene, there's no guarantees. So it's a rough go. But when did I know I was going to hang him up? I mean, man, I don't know. We had won our like 6th or 7th national championship. And I played for the New York Rugby Club. We're an incredible club, still an incredible club. And I ended up playing in a regional tournament and I got really beat up. And we were just found out that rugby was going to be in the Olympics, and I sat down with the U.S. team, with the U.S. coach, and we had like a real talk, I was like, am I hanging on for 4 years? Like I was 30, I was moving away from New York. I was moving to Philly. I just got married.
Old, so old.
I know.
But athlete old.
I was athlete old. And we had a real conversation, and I'm glad he afforded it to me. And he said, look, you could hang on and you could try to be that older player on the team that's going to make the Olympic team, but the odds are really stacked against you. And he was just very honest with me. He's like, I'm looking at 18-year-olds right now that I'm trying to foster over the next 4 years that are going to, come up and make this team. And that mixed with a pretty gnarly injury, it was, and moving away from New York to Philly, and, I felt like it was just time to pivot and be like a professional career athlete, not an actual professional athlete. So yeah, I had torn my shoulder and a pretty bad head injury, and I was just, it was just very clear that it was time. So it's 2011. It's been a long time since I played.
Wow. You talked about your personal relationship with it, like going in and you're going in the pool, you might not be selected. It's a constant. But one of the things I hear about, one of my friends is a tennis player, and she's like at Samsung, and she says, I am so good at my job because it taught me teamwork. And what is that lesson that you carry? Like, is there a specific moment that you remember, like, I applied those skills from like rugby, track as an individual sport, but to your work today or in the past?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think, from a rugby perspective, the game is very nuanced. It's really interesting. It's, you kind of have models of play, but you don't really have a ton of set plays because it's continuous play. So it's not like football where whistle gets blown every time your knee hits the ground and you get to reset and like huddle up.
Yeah.
It's continuous play. So if you get tackled, you protect the ball gets picked up, and you go again. And there's no stopping, there's no communicating. So my point is, you are following the person with the ball, right? You are trying to be an option you're trying to be eyes for the person with the ball. And when they're holding the ball, they are the decision maker. And they're not always going to make the decision that you would make, because what they see in front of them is like this, right? You see the whole field while you're running behind them 2 or 3 steps, but they're right here. And so, I think there's a camaraderie piece here, which is understanding that people aren't always going to make the right decision, but you got to go with them. You got to go with them. And you got to be their eyes. You got to be their ears. You got to communicate. You got to be a good teammate, but you've got to trust that maybe they see something that you don't. Yep. And so, I think there's another piece to it too, which is win or lose, right? If you have a really strong deployment or a really rocky deployment in technology, there is always room for a retro, right? So whether you win the game or you lose the game, you could have always played it a little bit better. And so having the, having the rigor to sit down and look back and say, how did we play that game? How did that go? How could we have done it better? We're going to have this opportunity again. We're going to see the field the way we did last time, right? In the next game. So how could we handle that next time more effectively? And I think having the ability to respectfully review performance is a huge superpower, especially in the tech world, where those deployments, those misses, those gaps in deployments can cost, millions of dollars. So it's, I think those are kind of like the 2 main threads. One is like being able to reevaluate, retro, communicate as a team, and kind of readjust, but also acknowledge the fact that sometimes we're just moving fast and we've got to support each other, even if it might not be the direction we'd head.
It's funny because I remember being the manager for the JV soccer squad at my boarding school. So I was like carrying like the bags with the soccer balls in them from bus to bus. So I'm gonna have a spicy question here, and don't hold back. Yeah. Would you say athletes are better leaders?
I think that it is a spicy one. I think that leadership is something that is a craft that is fine-tuned over time.
Yeah.
And I think that athletes have a head start.
Yep. I agree.
Right? I agree. So I think we've just had more time with it, decades longer. We started when we were little, right? We saw leadership, we experienced leadership, we acted as leaders, we responded to leaders, we saw bad leadership, we've seen good leadership. So, I think that maybe our like leadership language is a little bit further along than most that are just entering it once they get into the workforce.
I love that perspective, because it means that not everyone can end at the same place, but the tools are acquired at different paces and different rates, fine-tuned differently. I mean, a good athlete at the beginning may not develop their leadership skills in full if they are not fine-tuning their craft, and vice versa. There's also a lot of, I think, adversity of any kind fine-tunes anyone over time. So there's a lot of ways to get there, but I do think that nuance of the head start is a really great one. You talked about like the deployments, right? And how it comes into place. And many people talk about the disconnect between retail and tech. But I've never heard it as clearly articulated as you did when we talked. You said retailers and technologists often don't understand how the other brings technology to market. And that's both on the build and the buy. Who do you think has had the toughest time accepting this? Is it the retailer? Is it the technologist? As you think of that retail partnership?
I don't know if either have actually accepted it. I think that's almost the crux of the problem, and I think, being an executive on both sides, I've experienced this firsthand where retail tech executives don't really acknowledge the fact that they don't understand how retail tech is bought. They don't understand how budgets are made on the retail side, how priorities are made, how cross-channel stakeholdership is facilitated. They don't understand the personal and emotional nuances, the risk that's on the line when a retailer actually buys and implements a piece of technology. And I think that what happens very often, and to no fault of the tech vendors, they often believe, because they have to have the kind of passion and resilience it takes to make it in these like startup experiences, is they believe that the problem that they solve and market is the most important problem. And so there isn't a lot of empathy in the sales process. There's a lot of pushing and forcing and lack of information capturing and gathering. And I think as a result, retailers have really pulled back and they're very cagey. They don't share a lot. And I think it's because every time they do share something, that data and that information is used to evaluate the value of the deal, not the need of the retailer. And so as they share their traffic volumes or their revenue or whatever KPIs or data points are being leveraged to determine how big this deal could be, they know that everything that they share is going to, add a comma or a zero to their contract value. And so it creates this really unhealthy dynamic between the seller and the buyer that I've experienced from both sides. Yep. So, I want to fix that.
It's major, right? Was there a specific moment in your career when you realized this is a big deal?
I'll give you kind of a more pointed example. I won't point to like a specific project, but there are scenarios where you have an innovative buyer that is able to understand the technology and communicate their vision for the application of the technology through a sales cycle, right? Some buyers are just like, hey, I need a fraud solution. Does it do ABC? Yes, cool. No. But most CDOs, most heads of digital are looking to apply technology to serve their customers' needs. And that's just not a one-size-fits-all thing. So there's always some innovation in the conversation.
Right.
The challenge is that you're always met with that eager beaver sales rep that is willing to overpromise to get the deal done.
Right.
So you go through this consultative sales process. You've got this innovative buyer with all of these questions and innovative ideas and product roadmap items that are overpromised. None of that gets documented. And then generic documentation gets thrown over the wall once the contract is signed. And so what happens? You get a generic implementation and an unsatisfied buyer. And that is where it's like the beginning of the end, right? It's like you've just got going and you've already fractured the trust in the relationship. And so when you're looking at building healthy retail tech partnerships, this is like the biggest roadblock to partnership on the planet. And when I was on the retail tech side, one of my roles was SVP of strategy. I ran partnerships at a company called Clutch, which is a loyalty stored value.
Gift card vendor.
There you go. Right. I didn't realize that. That's really funny. So gift cards, loyalty, et cetera. And it was my job to build go-to-market partnerships, right, with retailers and with technology companies to realize the 1 + 1 = 3 dream, right? So, hey, if we integrate with Salesforce and I can get their RVPs and AVPs to incentivize their staff to bring us to market, we all win, right? Like Salesforce customers get better integrated solutions. We get to ride the coattails of a Salesforce, and everybody kind of wins in this scenario. And what I found is that it was really, really hard to engage the retailer. Really, really hard. Right? Yeah, because I mean, if you're under delivering from day one, they're not going to want to be your advocate. They're not going to want to serve as a reference. They're not going to want to go to market for you or give you feedback on your product roadmap and make you better by having more retail insight. They're just not going to want to do that work because the relationship's already fractured. And so when I went over to the retail side, I promised myself I was going to be the partner I always wanted. And I was going to prove that if you could actually deliver on the promise of the sales cycle, that you'd have an active, valuable partner on the other side. And so that's really what I did. And I built great teams on it. I built great digital practices on it. I got to build my own brand on it. And it really proved to be true. And so when I was leaving Solo Brands and thinking, what do I want to do? What's my superpower? And what do I love doing? And is that the same thing? I realized that sitting at the intersection between how tech is built and deployed and how it's bought and implemented, serving as that partnership facilitator, is something that I really wanted to try to operationalize and bring to market in a scalable way.
It's exactly where I was going to go, that you have this gift for spotting the trend before they're recognized. You just talked about the retailer and technology, like the SIs, they haven't spotted or accepted it. Maybe they have, but like accepted it. But you have this gift for spotting it, and now you're going after it. What helped you see that? Like, was that a process of pattern recognition? Like, what were the frameworks you were using to identify that?
The gap in the market, you mean?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I lived it, right? I lived it firsthand. And, there's a very small handful of people out there that, and we all know each other on the retail side.
Or some way or another. Like,
that all are willing to do this work. And it is work. It is work to prepare yourself to represent the great work that you're doing on stage at a conference, to highlight your vendors and create opportunity and trust for them in the market. It is work to go do that. And not everybody's built for it. Not everybody loves doing it. But if you don't have positive use cases in market, you definitely can't do it. And so, there is a group of probably a dozen of us that do this type of work and give back to our vendors. And there's a bunch that don't. And my prediction is that they don't because of the challenges and the friction mentioned previously, right? I think that they are struggling with deployments, and I think they're having a hard time justifying their payback. And I think that they need help. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah, you've leaned into partnerships and now all your new endeavors into that retail tech connection, CDA, the launch of your agency. I think you mentioned you have a new book in the works. So am I making that up? Or
no, I do.
Yeah? Okay, I was like, am I making this shit up?
No, it's been in the works for a bit. So it's kind of like on hold as I try to build this. But it is all about retail tech partnerships. And I would say the premise, the foundation of the book is built on this belief that reciprocity, vision, and trust are the three pillars of what make a good retail tech partnership. And trust is often broken in this kind of first initial sales process. And that's really where we first fall short. My belief is that if trust is maintained through the sales process and through the implementation process, then the opportunity to champion the great work that we're doing in market and create those reciprocal relationships where you've got brands that are willing to speak on your behalf, serve as references, and really give back to the relationship are going to help lift all boats. And the vision piece is really about tech vision. It's really about how can this piece of technology, if it did these 8 other things, impact my world? And that kind of feedback from a retailer to a vendor is priceless, right? Yeah. Understanding what are my near-term, mid-term, and long-term challenges that I think this technology could solve for. I'll give you an example. So working with a fraud provider, Forder, okay? And Forder's magic is their matching technology. And what they do is they will look at transactions that result in a chargeback, and they will say, oh, whoa, Steve, you were fraudulent. That's weird, right?
Yeah.
But their matching technology will help Forder see that across their network of brands that they represent, that they do for on the fraud side, that, oh, there's Steve over at Sephora. He's saying that he's Jenna, but because of our amazing technology, the 6,000 data points we're using to match these transactions together, we actually know that Jenna is actually Steve now, and Jenna's fraudulent, and I'm going to decline her transaction, right? And so I went back to them and I said, okay, so you're using all these data points to determine if somebody's fraudulent, and you're declining this order at the pre-auth. At the time, I was working for Snipes, which is a global sneaker streetwear retailer.
Love the streetwear brand.
Yeah. And we were slinging hype Nikes and Adi, Puma, Jordans, et cetera. And so we had to deal with during that time period was hype selling times where you'd have a ton of people come, 1 million people come for 1,000 pairs of shoes, because that 1,000 pair of shoes has aftermarket value. So they could buy it for 100 and sell it for 400, right? Mm-hmm. So what they would do is they would actually deploy bots onto our site, and those bots would try to go and pay for the shoe. This isn't like nefarious, but these bots would try to gobble up as many units as possible, because if I can make $300 worth of margin on a shoe, I want as many as possible. I get 10 shoes, I make, $3,000. So the consumers would come and deploy these bots and try to gobble up all of our units. The challenge for me as a retailer is that every bot that gets a shoe is one less LTV that I can facilitate in the long term. Yeah. I can't sell a hoodie to a bot. I can't sell socks or
we love that though.
Or a hat. But it's not a persona. It's not a person.
Yeah, no.
We're there for the margin, period, right?
Yes.
So I went back to Forder and I said, hey, if I gave you the behavior, like bot behavior at the transaction level, could you decline bot transactions? Mm-hmm. So if we have this whole bot mitigation strategy, and if it gets through all of our safety nets, and it looks like this, right? Maybe it's, number of transaction attempts. Maybe it's time between transaction attempts, right? Something that's just not possible by a human, right? Like pushing the button. Could you decline the transaction and not allow that bot to get the unit? And they said, yeah, let us take a look at that. Mm-hmm. And so they built out the model and they deployed it, and we would turn it on for our releases, and we would decline these bot transactions, these attempts, and we would save those units for real people with real LTV. So what did they do? They productized it and they sold it to Nike, and they sold it to New Balance, and they sold it to Adi, and they sold it to Yeezy, and they sold it, right? And they created a whole new product line that they could go monetize across their network of customers. And so if we hadn't had the type of relationship where I wholly understood their technology and how it worked, and had the trust and the relationship to go back to them and say, hey, I have another problem. It's not fraud, but I have another problem, and I think your technology can actually solve this problem. And if they weren't willing to listen to me and think about, hey, can we invest in this technology and see if this works? Like if that partnership, if that trust wasn't there, they would have missed out on a whole product development cycle that has created a whole new line of business for them. So
I think that trust is what's broken, right? In many ways, I hear a lot of software vendors present there, and they're just so excited about their technology, which is amazing, but they're not solving the problem that the retailer has. And then the retailer, in so many ways, is not listening to that new software because they can't see forward. And that requires being more intentional about how you partner. What do you think is missing? How do we bridge that gap in intention with retailers and software vendors?
I think it is all about the sales process and implementation process. I think if we smooth that out, if there's oversight that is enabled to make sure that what is being sold is what's being delivered, I think we preserve that trust from the jump. And if we do that, the relationship has a much better opportunity, much more potential to create that cyclical reciprocity that I think it has the potential to offer. And so CDA, Chief Digital Agency, the whole premise, right, is to literally sit right in between how tech is built and deployed by vendors and how it is bought and implemented by retailers, and be the conduit to make sure that what the buyer is buying is what they're getting, and what the vendor is building is built expressly for retailers.
Mm-hmm. Were there any assumptions you made as you began trying to bridge this gap between both, that maybe at the beginning you were like, I think the need is X, and I'm going to express it in that way. But now you talk about oversight being the major need. Maybe that's where is there maybe something you were like, okay, maybe they don't need this. They just need somebody with oversight.
Yeah, it's a good question. I found that the vendor value proposition was received incredibly well. They're like, oh my God, yes, please help us, tell us everything, all the things, let's go. So that part of the cycle, starting that part of the flywheel, has been smooth.
Yeah.
I'm still pretty new at this. I'm only like 4 months in. So I'm still kind of like getting into these cycles, right? Yeah. So as these cycles kind of continue, and I'm going to say in theory for now, in theory, we could provide oversight for the implementation for some of these late stage deals. So a late stage deal happens, CDA gets involved, we make sure that what's being sold is what's contracted and being delivered. And in theory, if CDA being in the mix can help get more delivered faster, more efficiently, then the next question to the brand is, well, what's next? What are you looking for? And I think on the brand side, the value proposition is a little bit more nuanced because they buy in so many different ways. Right. And some have total ownership, some share ownership with IT, some have procurement, some have, there's just so many different ways that technology is selected and delivered. There's third-party SIs. There's just and everybody is just configured differently. There's no one-size-fits-all scenario. So figuring out the model on the brand side is a little more interesting because, as a services provider, you want to have a static service that you offer, right? So it should be boxed in. This is what it is, right? It's contract negotiation, it's tech selection, it's requirements gathering, it's oversight. Maybe. So still kind of testing that piece out, trying to figure out what is the right value proposition for the brand and how does it get paid for? Where does that sit? OpEx versus CapEx. It's interesting. It's tricky.
Yeah, and I think what might happens often, and I've learned in my experience, is you may have a lot of Forder moments where you start thinking about fraud, but then you've realized a bot need. And so over time, as you get in, that also is, as you, with this retail talk partnership might happen. It's like you realize it's a yes and situation, not a yes or. So excited for that to happen as you sink your teeth in.
Well, and that's what's so fun too about the concept of having multiple brand clients is that many of us who are sitting in the seat that are making these decisions or have this vision for the brand, we're in that seat for 4, 5, 6 years. Yeah. And we have a one-dimensional, one brand-focused view. I'm in a situation where, in theory, I could be gleaning perspective off of multiple brands simultaneously and bringing all of those learnings back to the network of brands. And so I think there's an opportunity to move a lot faster, and especially in the age of AI and everything that's changing and everything's moving so quickly, having that aggregate view of what's happening across the market, just not in the brand that I'm currently representing, I think could be very interesting as well. Yeah.
You've had this 15 plus career. Not 15 decades. You're owning an agency now. You're speaking. You're doing all these fun things. You're on boards. And one of the things as I was reading through that is I always say adversity of any kind makes a person uniquely qualified to bring these diverse perspectives to the table. And one thing you pointed out is that the low number of LGBTQs on boards, but at the same time, the relation of that these directors outperform the market. How has that identity of yours influenced maybe the way you lead, if at all?
Oh, that is such an interesting question. I think that, look, growing up in the retail tech world, incredibly male-dominated. Yeah. Incredibly male-dominated. Countless times I'm the only woman in the room. I was down, I was overseas recently working with a client and sitting at a big steak dinner, and I had a moment. I looked around the table and I'm like, I am the only woman at this table. And these guys probably don't even get it. They don't even think oh, I wonder what she's doing. I wonder if this is okay for her, Yeah. And so I think, we're kind of forced to kind of thrive in that discomfort.
Right.
We're forced to, we can't show it. We can't communicate it. We have to just persevere through it. And it just, for me, it just kind of fuels me. I'm like, yeah, I can hang. Let's go. Let's do it. No problem. And for me, it's funny. I've been reading this book called Unleashed, and it's all about authentic leadership, and highly recommend.
Yeah.
And
Unleashed.
Yeah. Okay. And that is, of course, a friend recommended it to me because she's like, "Oh my God, you have to read this. You're going to feel so validated." I am just always me. There is me in my gender identity, in my sexual identity, in my athletic identity, I'm a mom. I am authentic, and I'm transparent, and I'm open in my leadership. And I don't know if I could have done that if I hadn't had years of training, right? Years of just taking hits, literal hits. I'm just not afraid of a hit.
Yeah.
And so it allows for this level of connection with my direct reports and with my peers that really is authentic and open and trusting. And we get to do real work together for each other. And I've been in scenarios with leaders that don't enable that kind of honesty. And it's ugly, right? The culture is incredibly ugly. And so I think being a minority, and I have been through it, I've been through it in dealing with bigotry and handling some pretty intense realities in my own life. And those scenarios just, in my opinion, make me stronger. Yeah. This is going to be a really funny story, but you might appreciate this. I had this coming out moment, not in the gay way. I had this coming out moment. It was at my wedding, and I was the athlete. My father is actually a trained potter and glassblower. Went to RISD, really? Total artist, interior designer. My mom, former CEO, nonprofit CEO, and jazz musician. We have no idea where this athletic situation came from. Yep. So that was kind of my thing. My dad was the artist, my mom's a musician, I'm this athlete. And I always kind of dabbled, right? I was always in drawing classes, and I was in gospel choirs, and I would sing, but it was never a part of my real identity. It was just, I enjoyed that because I grew up around it, and it was part of who I was. Yeah. And so on my wedding day, I decided that I was going to come out. And so I take the mic right before our first dance, and I tell this story that I just told to you. Yeah. And I explained to the crew in front of me of 150 of my closest friends and family that no one in my family has ever heard me sing. Wow. And what I had done is I had recorded myself to a YouTube karaoke version. I don't know how it sounded so great, but I recorded myself to a YouTube karaoke version of our first dance song. And the only person that had it was our DJ. And I had him play it. And we danced to it.
That's amazing.
And this moment for me was the scariest moment, right? It was the most vulnerable moment on the most vulnerable day of my life in front of the people that mattered the most to me. And I realized in that moment that nothing was going to be scarier than this moment. And I'm in my wife's arms, and we're just dancing, and people are crying, and we're I'm shaking, it was this unbelievable moment. And I think about that every time I get on stage at Dreamforce, or I'm, about to get on a podcast, or I'm about to get into a boardroom full of dudes, or go eat a steak dinner in Brazil. I just remember, I made it through the scariest moment. And it unleashed me. I felt like a tiger out of the cage. I was just all right, gonna go play, against China in front of 35,000 people in a stadium. Great, let's go. No problem. It's fine. Nothing is scarier than what I went through. And I think leveraging that and using that to empower the people around me and give them the confidence, it's just, Yeah, it's good stuff.
I love that because I think even after in my 2 years since I left corporate, I've been growing into my authentic self. Like this has been like such an amazing gift to be in this because it allows me to connect with people and just share parts of my life, but hear parts of their life too. And this is how you build. And in so many ways, one thing that I was like, as I was hearing your story, I was going to ask you like, how do we show up as our authentic selves, right? And at first I heard years of training and I was like, okay, well, that might be like really hard for people to hear. Like it's going to take me a long time. But then something about this story was like a just do it moment. It also just takes taking a leap. Is that what you would say as if you were telling people where to start being your authentic self?
I think so. I mean, it's all about risk taking, right? It's all about being fearless, being willing to fall down. I mean, that could have gone horribly wrong, right? It could have been really embarrassing. Like, and maybe it was, and I said no. Like, I don't know. But yeah, I mean, I think it just goes back to how we started the conversation, which is like boarding school. Like, why? Like, how did you decide to do that? Well, you just go. You just dive in. You feel like it's something you need to do. It might be scary, but you just got to go. Take the risk and do it. And just have the trust in yourself that you're going to get up and wipe off your knees if you skin them and go again.
I love that so much. I feel like what's awesome about being human is you're learning all the time. So I love like just hearing like all the things that we can do to be better, the better version of ourselves. And shifting gears entirely, but I think like I couldn't have this conversation with you without talking about AI. Like obviously it's like such a hot topic, but I thought like one thing that was interesting is that I think you bring such a thoughtful perspective on it. You were talking about the unsexy stuff. People like very focused on certain areas of the business, the human touch, where we are in the AI journey. But one thing that stuck to me that you said is that many are stuck on many for me are stuck on the art of still possible. But you said it's time to move on to these practical applications. When did it hit you that maybe, okay, I've learned enough, it's time to start?
Learned enough?
We're always learning.
No, it's changing and moving so quickly. I mean, I think the timeline that I experienced, and tell me if you're with me on this, is look, we've been using AI for a long time.
Yeah, long time. Generative AI is just predictive algorithms. Yeah.
Long time. Yeah. So ChatGPT is what really changed this for us because it allowed our moms to use it.
Yeah.
Right? It became the average human could understand the value of the application of the AI. So as retailers, as practitioners, as operators, as non-technical resources potentially, we were able to play with something that we could actually apply to our jobs, to our day-to-day, and create efficiencies, right? It all started with copywriting. We thought, all right, well, we have ChatGPT. I write copy every day, right? I've got a team member here who is writing product copy every single day. They spend all day doing it. We measure their frequency every week. You know, how many products did we enable this week? Was it better or worse than last week, right? This is a metric that's tracked, product enablement. So can we speed up product enablement? If we can, is our path to cash faster now?
Right.
Because we can move faster and get more live faster. That is real. And it's measurable. So we did it. We implemented it. We leveraged AI to create product copy. And what we found is that, yes, we can enable product faster. We can also free up humans to do things that humans do well, which is actually write things like recaps of events and our perspectives on things and leverage creative thought or problem solving to create content that's actually driving incremental SEO value, not just benign product copy that's a requirement to sell a product.
Yep.
So that was cool. And then what? Firefly came out, right? We're like, oh, cool. Let's do some images. Let's like knock some images out. Let's do some editing. Like, let's maybe speed up our product image editing. Like, let's go. Let's do it. Oh, I only have 3 concrete pillars and I need 4 for this shoot. No problem. We'll put it in an Apple Crate and we'll just use some AI to, put in the concrete pillar. So that was kind of the next step. And I think, and we exhausted what we could contemplate as retailers.
Yeah.
And we were kind of on pause for a little bit of time. We were waiting for tech to catch up. We were waiting for tech to come back and say, hey, we've got all these platforms and all these systems, and now we have implemented AI on top of them to create more efficiencies for you. This is how it works. And the result of that was like, to your earlier point, like these productized point-in-time AI use cases. Yeah. So that we could say, hey, this is what this costs, this is what this does, this is what it saves you, or this is a conversion it leads to, and this is how you're going to actually measure your payback on it. Invest in this. And that came in the forms of things like long-form content generation, at the PDP level.
Yep.
It came in the form of, propensity modeling and discount delivery. It came in optimized send times for ESP and SMS. It came in conversational search. It came in generative chatbots. All these productized use cases that technology companies put a box around and have been selling and putting in market, which has been great. And now we're embarking on the agentic story.
Yeah.
Now we're getting a little bit wider in our understanding of the application of this technology and a little bit more comfortable in exploring how more, not generic, but just AI solutions like Sierra without specific use cases can necessarily come in and say, let's identify your challenge and let's use AI to solve it. And that could be proximity routing. That could be a logistics use case. It could be allocation and allocation. It could be planning. It could be where should our inventory be. It could be, there are just an unlimited number of use cases now. And I think one thing that's actually a nice hybrid of those two things, which I've seen in market, is one example is a company called Fabric. They're a tech company. They've got a bunch of solutions, but one product that they've been leaning into recently is their order management solution. And one thing that they're doing, which I think is so fascinating, is they're building a natural language interface on top of, like a generative interface on top of their order management solution. So let me break that down in like retail nerd language. So today when I get a P&L at the end of every month, usually it's like into the first week of the next month, right? So I'm like already a week late in evaluating the month. It's my job as a CDO to look at that P&L and find anomalies. Were we on budget? Were we off budget? Where were we over and why? Because if I can't justify why, there's a problem. So I need to know what's going on. So I get a P&L and I realize, oh man, we're 20% over our shipping budget. Were we 20% over our forecast and just ship more orders? I'm okay with that. But if the answer is no, I want to know what's going on. And the answer could be, we acquired a bunch of customers in California and we don't have a distribution center or stores that can satisfy that region, and we're actually shipping across 3 zones instead of 1. And so our costs have gone up. Okay, cool problem to have. It could be, hey, we had a goal of increasing our UPT last month and we were successful, but those units weren't in the same locations, and so we doubled our shipments, right? Yeah. Whatever it is, I got to answer for it. So I got to understand what's going on. So what happens today, I go to my team. Guys, what happened? Here are the 4 potential possibilities. Somebody's got to go figure this out. Everybody drop what you're doing. Drop what you're doing. Stop the work you're doing. Put everything on pause. Go pull all these reports, do a bunch of VLOOKUPs, and I want an answer as soon as possible. How quickly can you get it to me? Oh, Jenna, next Friday. Can we have a week? So now I'm 2 weeks into the next month. The trend is already
lost the insight.
Trends changed. So I couldn't even solve anything, right? I couldn't, right? Maybe I have a year over year possible solution, but are we really taking these monthly insights and bringing them year over year? Because we're going to bubble up the big ones. These little ones aren't going to, right? So what if I had a system instead? What if I had an order management system instead that knew my budget and was just exposing anomalies when they were happening? Or what if there was an order management solution where I could just ask it a question? Hey, why are my shipping costs 30% higher than I had anticipated? And what if it could give you a real answer? Think about how much faster we move, how much faster we'd identify problems, how much faster we would solve them, and how much more profitable that we would be. This is the type of commitment to the infusion of AI from technology companies that I want to see. And I think what's happening right now is those things are happening, but retailers are a little paralyzed in knowing how to get started and knowing how to build trust, knowing how to budget for it, knowing how to hire for it. So we're just, the train hasn't quite left the station yet. I feel everyone's on it. We're all on it. We're on the train. It just hasn't quite left the station yet. But it's going, once it does, it's going to be nuts. And I believe the kind of evolution we're going to see in the customer shopping journey is going to be
huge,
massive.
I mean, what you just said of where should I start is the main question I get from so many retailers I talk to. And for me, it's why I vibed with your unsexy stuff, because I think they have so much concern about the control of brand voice, what the customer sees, the experience. And so something like reporting to me is like, that's such an easy way. The customer doesn't see it, but you're just learning, and it's an unsexy way to apply AI. You gain trust in what AI can do over time. Is that also what you tell people of like where to start as they look to gain trust in AI?
I think a really big no-brainer way to start is to have your current vendors pitch you on their commitment to AI, because they all have it. And either they have AI use cases in market that you just didn't know, or they're about to. So I really think that the benefit of doing that is you've already selected them. You're already paying for them. There's no decision to be made. There's just an education to glean and to bring to your leadership so that you can actually just say, hey, here's how we're using AI today. It's not a should we use AI, should we invest in it? It's an educational moment to say, hey, we're using it. Here's the value that it brings. And it's
not onboarding a whole new tool. You already have trust in the tool.
You have it.
So it's an easy, just, hey, it's a little upsell. Like, we're just going to have this new feature from this, or like this about,
It could be a new feature, or it could just be an understanding of AI that's already being utilized. I mean, if anyone's using a decision engine for fraud, they're already using AI.
Yep.
I guarantee you. I mean, if you're not using,
they're not.
If you're not using a decision engine for fraud, you need to get one immediately.
Yeah, I think like what you talked about fabric, right? You talked also about existing tools. But what I've been most excited about are the things that you mentioned incumbents. You mentioned CINT, Neon Pixel, and you talk about the importance of aggression and having tangible results. I'm sure you do the same, but I get about 5 to 10 DMs a week from SIs pitching, their new tool for someone like. What are the cues that they should be looking for? Like, this is a legit tool. This is somebody I should consider, somebody I should meet with.
Yeah, it's a great question, and it was really the impetus behind, Doug Weish, Andy Lodato, and myself coming together to found the Retail AI Council.
Yeah.
The purpose of doing that was to really serve as a retail-led organization that could help cut through the clutter and actually bring some validation or legitimacy to some of these solutions. Yeah. So I think that's one place, is like finding a community that can actually help you validate some of these, because it's really easy to spin cycles, and spend dollars and be used to validate a hypothesis versus implement a solution that is tested and true. Yeah. So I think that, looking to your resources to validate some of these solutions, like the Forresters, the Gartners, the Retail AI Councils, et cetera, is a great way to start. And I also think that building a really close-knit community of peers that you trust is also very, very important. Very everybody's testing. And what I'm finding recently is that people aren't talking a lot. Like, I'm having conversations with brands, and I'm learning about some of the things they're doing, and I'm like, why aren't you saying this out in market? Like, why aren't you telling the world that you are doing some of these things? Like, some use cases, like using computer vision across cameras across a store.
Stop.
To identify. I mean,
I've heard of the technology, but that's somebody's active.
Yeah, to identify who is the best resource on the floor to answer a customer request at a specific area. Like, how do you pick the person to say, hey, Stan, go over and help in aisle 4, right? Well, they've got computer vision that's literally tapping a consumer to say, oh, that's the best person. They're back in an aisle on their iPhone right now, hiding. Or having a generative, product level solution that can answer questions on the spot to help assist a store associate in answering questions for a consumer. Like, they're doing really cool things in market right now, and retailers need to get out there and tell their stories. But again, I would argue this is a lack of partnership. This is a lack of setting the right expectation in the relationship between the vendor and the retailer, because if we're going to get AI out to market, there's got to be confidence and trust and storytelling, and it's not happening as much as I think as it could be right now.
Oh, I mean, it sounds like what you're also saying, it's not the absence of being done, it's the not talking about it. That's that is also happening.
Yeah.
I've taken so much of your time, so a few questions to close.
Sure.
Which are fun ones. A game of quick kiss, marry, kill in your sports.
Okay.
Track, hockey, and rugby.
Oh God. Okay, how old am I answering this question? Like right now?
Oh man.
Am I
Actually,
watching
I want to
or am I
know
playing?
now because
Watching or
it's
playing?
almost like your memory of like what it was.
I think I'd have to kill rugby.
Kill rugby.
Too hard.
Too hard.
To like, it's really hard to stop. It's hard to watch. It's hard to not be playing anymore. So I'm okay leaving that one. Kiss, I would say. I would say hockey. And marry. I loved running. I loved sprinting. I loved being a total underdog. And I mean, I got to win a national championship my junior year and was, came second my sophomore year. Like I had a really awesome track run. It was really fun.
You're the second track star that I've talked to and I'm like, I love this for track. Like, let's talk more about it.
It's so fun. You know what it is? There's this, and you can apply this in your career too. I'm sure you've been here, or whether like it's in your studies or whatever it might be. But like, there's this moment where you think you don't have any more.
Yeah.
And then you find it, right? And then you find it. It's like those moments are just like chef's kiss. Yeah. Exactly. It's like, so track, it's like you get there right away. I mean, you're right there. And if you can find that little extra and man, you get a win out of it, it's like super rewarding.
Couldn't ask for more. As we close, where can people find you, Jenna?
LinkedIn is a great way. chiefdigitalagency.com is another way. My mobile number is, no, I'm just kidding. LinkedIn's a great way. Or just shoot me an email, jenna.posner@chiefdigitalagency.com.
I love it. Jenna, this has been fab. Thank you so much for sharing all parts of your story. I think people are going to learn so much about how they can evolve over time and learn. And I'm so excited.
Now make sure you subscribe to Evolve Voices, this leading and incredible project where our ambassadors are interviewing amazing professionals from all over the world so they can share their perspective and benefit you with their perspective, their knowledge, and you can understand what's happening in the different markets. Evolve Voices is a project part of the Evolve Commerce Club, the #1 and leading community where we connect international professionals in the world of commerce. We are now connecting professionals in more than 40 markets, and every week we invite an expert to share their perspective and their knowledge. So if you'd like to know more, you can always look at the comments. We have a link there so you can request your application and stay tuned for the next episode. Thanks for watching. All the best. Ciao.